Frankenstein, Dracula, werewolves, phantoms, zombies, gorgons, mad scientists, abominable snowmen. These are the monsters that they have created. Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Ingrid Pitt, Veronica Carson, Oliver Reed, Madeline Smith, Barbara Shelley, Michael Gow, Hazel Court, Bartine Beswick. These are the people that faced the horrors. Jimmy Sangster, Terrence Fisher, Michael Carreras, Peter Sasty, John Elder, Evan Jones, Anthony Hines. These are the people who created the horrors behind Hammer Studios. Welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, your gateway into classic horror cinema, brought to you by Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events and Broken Lighthouse Pictures, and welcome to our program today. Now, if you have been with us for a while, you'll realize that what we do with our podcast is we take an individual film and me and a special guest come on and we discuss, we analyze, we conversate about this particular film, and it could be some more critical analysis, or it could be us having a little fun with the movie. And sometimes, just sometimes, we do veer off into a tangent every once in a while, but we make sure to come on back because you guys enjoy what we do here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest host tonight because we're going to see what he thinks about the movie we're talking about. And don't forget that because this is a Hammer Studio Horrors, we are Hammer film lovers, and we hope that you are one too. So if you have seen this film, we hope that you will enjoy this conversation and you will go back to the movie and revisit it. And if you've never seen the film before, I hope our conversation will allow you to have a clearer picture of when you do actually see the film. So with that, my special guest for today is Thomas Tinnerello, who is a favorite of ours from both our Conversation in Horror podcast and now this one. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin L. Powers, for summoning me from my subterranean pit where I spent hours at my organ playing Beethoven and singing Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera. Copyright infringement.
So, as you now know, the movie we are discussing is The Phantom of the Opera from 1962, the only one from this particular franchise. So it'll be good to talk about this with you, Thomas. So tell me a little bit about where you kind of came into this film and what you thought about it originally.
Well, I watched this film for this podcast. I'd never seen it before. So This was my first blush with Hammer's version of it, although I was aware that it existed for years. But as we'll probably get into, we'll remind people that some of these movies are very hard to find when you're American. Having said that, hello, everybody, to our friends across the pond, for whom these movies are much more accessible and much more easy to get at. And some of you probably even have fond memories of growing up in, say, suburb of Liverpool and watching these on late night television. You may have even watched this movie after a night with the pub with your friends, your mates. But as you can see, my British accent comes and goes on this show. But even though this is my first time seeing this movie about a week ago, the only way I could procure a copy of Hammer's sole efforts at this timeless tale, I had to go to your local public library to get a box set called The Franchise Collection, the Hammer Horror Series. It's the DVD box set with a lovely picture of Peter Cushing and a werewolfed out Oliver Reed on there. And some of you may have this collection. Some of you may have it rotting away in a plastic box somewhere in your basement. I had to special order this sucker from a library in Savannah, Georgia, where I waited 4 days for it to cross the divide to my little library in Dallas, Georgia. And was it worth it? Mostly. There's a lot of other great films on this list, but I think it's funny that, Kevin, they call us the Franchise Collection. Only 2 of these. Wait a minute. One, they got Brides of Dracula on here, so that's 1.
Frankenstein, I believe.
and Evil of Frankenstein. There are only 2 franchises represented on this 2, 4, 6, 8 film set. So whose idea it was to call this the franchise collection should have been fired. Because this person's an idiot, obviously. This is just kind of like a random grab bag of a lot of things that either worked somewhat or didn't work. But then again, we love Hammer, and we love diving into the famous and not so famous. And like we said before, this is Hammer's only shot at the Phantom.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that they only did one Phantom, and they never figured out how to make a franchise out of the Phantom, which I find disappointing. So I feel like there's so many possibilities they could have done if the Phantom had lived at the end of this movie. They could have had the Phantom go to Manhattan and terrorize Broadway. They could have had the Phantom go to Mars. They could have had the Phantom go to Africa. There's so many things the Phantom could have done. It's a missed opportunity. But anyway, I just reminded myself that I have kind of a weird sort of lifelong obsession with the Phantom of the Opera and the Phantom as a character.
Okay.
Maybe it's because I like the idea, like, of all of the early silent monsters, which in America, the silent monsters were pretty much almost always had to do with deformities. We had the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and you had Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. And then you had, a few other things. But, like, generally speaking, there was deformed people were the monsters. It's only later on that you get, when we get into the Universal horror cycle, it's only later on that you get into supernatural monsters like Dracula and the Wolfman. But, so I guess I've always identified with this outcast figure who's also a creative artist. He's disfigured on the outside, but inside he has the soul of a poet and a cool black cape, and he runs around like Batman, killing people, and he's got a secret lair like a bat cave. And it was later on, though, I realized after that, because I didn't grow up with Lon Chaney's silent movie, because as a kid, I didn't really watch silent movies, because that's not what kids do. So for me, my real proper introduction to the Phantom was probably Darkman by Sam Raimi. And I realized if you go back, and by the way, guys, if you go and watch listen to the main feed, Conversations in Horror, go back into our conversation about Darkman, you'll see me talk more in depth about how my obsession with Darkman is really my way, and why Darkman is really the best version of the Phantom of the Opera. Because it is also a movie about a disfigured, tortured genius who gets revenge. Although this Hammer version is probably the one version where he doesn't really get revenge, and we'll talk about that too. Yeah. This is a very atypical interpretation of it, although it is far from the weirdest version of the Phantom of the Opera. That dubious honor, I think, is a split, a tie between Dario Argento's version, where the Phantom, played by Gillian Sands, is not scarred but was raised by rats and has and then it devolves into like some softcore pornography where he catches Asia Argento and does stuff to her. It's really dumb, but and I was very disappointed because I thought, ooh, Dario Argento does Phantom of the Opera, I gotta see this, and then I was like, no. So it's either that, which is very strange, or Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, which is worth seeing, but it's very, very, very weird. So yeah, that's kind of where that's my roundabout way of saying, this is a movie that exists, and we're going to talk about it today. But it's got a long, long history. This movie is a string of pearls that leads all the way back to a novel by Gaston Leroux.
Yeah.
Which Gaston Leroux, basic story of a phantom who haunts the Paris Opera House and falls in love with a singer named Christine Daae and takes her down into the sewers and gets rescued by some handsome dude. And I'm only saying this on the off chance that some future archaeologists find this podcast in the wreckage of civilization and this ends up being the only record of the Phantom of the Opera that exists anymore. After all the film prints have been, deteriorated, and all the DVDs have been crushed and melted by radioactive flames. So eventually, it's a tragic story, but Phantom gets his revenge on the people who've wronged him, and then eventually a mob comes in and kills him. Interesting side note: Gaston Leroux, to his dying day, claims that he based the story on a real person. He claimed that that Eric the Phantom was a real person who really did live in the bowels of the Paris Opera House. Because sure enough, there was an excavation of the Paris Opera House catacombs, and sure enough, they did find a skeleton there in the walls. Yes, so that is the possibility that maybe there really was a real Phantom of the Opera, and Gaston Leroux, very French author, made this French story about this person who may or may not have been real, and then Hammer, years later in 1962, decides to make a very British version of the Phantom.
Yeah.
And taking it and just like erases all Frenchness out of this story. It's now in a London opera house that doesn't exist. This was shot in like a place called the Wembley Theatre, which I don't know if that exists either. But yeah, so this is kind of unusual for Hammer, because like most of the times with their other monsters, with your Dracula, with your Frankensteins, while yes, everybody is very British, the names and places remain from the source material. Like the Curse of Frankenstein is still set in Switzerland. And yeah, and Dracula is still a Transylvanian prince. He is still Romanian, even though he is played by Christopher Lee and has that Christopher Lee voice when he does speak. But for one whole movie, he does not. But he's still Transylvanian. This is the only time I've ever seen where Hammer completely just divorces the original nationality of the monster, which I feel like after seeing this movie, there's no reason for it to have done that. Like, why? There's no reason to make the Phantom British. I mean, could you imagine if they did that with Dracula? Can you imagine if they made him the Count of Brisbane? Can you imagine if they made freaking Frankenstein from, I don't know, Liverpool? He grew up with his cobblestone streets. Although actually, that probably might have worked. Actually, now that I think about it, but Dracula, you can't. It just would have been ridiculous.
Well, I like the fact that they changed everything. Well, this being said, I've seen a whole bunch of Phantoms before I eventually got around to watching this Phantom of the Opera. So that change was actually was interesting to me. But yeah, it is interesting that they changed it like that when most of their other adaptations are not nearly as changed. I will agree.
Yeah, it's so weird, but maybe that has to do with the fact that they were trying to court a famous Hollywood actor.
You think
which we may get into as we get along. I'll just dangle that as a thing. But we got to get into who made this movie. Well, we're talking.
Well, let's first say that of most of the Hammer films we've discussed so far, Terrence Fisher was the director of the movie. He's the one of the few go-to people for Hammer Studios. So it's always interesting because the style and the look of this film definitely feels like one of his films. And we discussed some of the other directors whose styles were very different from Terrence Fisher. So this definitely feels like one of his films, although it doesn't feel nearly as dynamic as some of his other ones. And I always question where in the producing pantheon this one fit. And if it was like, okay, we have this script, let's make this movie, but we're not going to put a whole bunch of resources into it. Or if it was one of those, well, we're going to put a lot of resources into this film, but then the film didn't do well, and so they said, "Oh, well, let's bury this film. Let's not even worry about that anymore. Let's just go back to Frankenstein and Dracula."
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to know, though.
Well, I'm sure that there is. You know what? I bet you there is. There's a book called crap. I can't remember. We quoted it recently. There was like a history of Hammer book, but
there's a lot of Hammer books.
I know. I know. Actually, I think on IMDb, I think they quote a couple of pages from a particular Hammer book when we talk more about the who was almost cast in this movie. But who was cast in this movie? We got let's see, Michael. Is it Ga or Go?
I was Michael Gal, but I think someone told me that I've been pronouncing it wrong my entire life.
So it is Michael Ga. I thought it was. I thought it was. You know what? I kept calling him Alfred Ga because he is known to me and many other American dum-dums as Alfred from the Tim Burton / Joel Schumacher Batman franchise.
I will agree with you that's where I know him first, and until I start watching Hammer films and realize, holy shit, he shows up in a lot of Hammer films as well.
Yeah,
he said, "Oh, he looks good, young. What the hell are those other movies that he did?"
yeah. Although like Peter Cushing before him, he's one of those guys who I feel like was just born an old man. I don't think he ever looked young. I mean, even in this movie, he looks like a creepy old guy, and he is a right bastard opera producer who, spoilers, stole the music of the Phantom, who, by the way, also has a name change that I think is hilarious in this movie. Because canonically the Phantom is named Eric, no last name. This movie not only gives gives the Phantom a first and last name, it gives him a job. He was a professor, apparently. He was fully integrated member of English society, a little eccentric, although, but nevertheless very successful, apparently, at what he did. So, and that guy is played by Herbert Lom.
Yep.
Now, those of you who out there, probably like me, grew up with Herbert Lom as the Chief Inspector Dreyfus from the Pink Panther movies. And I feel like poor Herbert kind of got typecast as the crazy guy behind an organ, because not only did he do, because if you remember in Pink Panther Strikes Back, his character goes insane and tries to kill Inspector Clouseau, and then goes to a mental hospital and then goes insane again. But this time he goes really insane and goes full supervillain and tries to creates a particle like annihilator, and he's going to destroy the UN. And he's like full on like he's like pounding away at the keys of a big organ. And he's got a castle and henchmen. He's a full on Bond villain in that movie, and it's great. But then he did that. He did this movie, and he also did the same daggum thing when he played Captain Nemo in one of my favorite movies as a kid, Jules Verne's Mysterious Island.
In fact, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, in fact, according to IMDb, he's playing the same music on the harpsichord that he is in the Nautilus in that movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw that. I just saw that one again last year. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He was in that. Because it's been years since I'd seen that movie. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't show up to like the last third of the movie, but he's totally there as Captain Nemo. And amongst the giant bugs and giant squid things that are stop motion animation, Ray Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen. That's why I have it, because I have a whole Ray Harryhausen collection of all the movies he did stop motion animation that worked on. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I grew up watching that movie a lot when I was a kid. So that's kind of what Herbert Lom's career became after a while.
Well, no, it's good that we mentioned him, because he doesn't get mentioned a whole lot, and he didn't do a whole lot of Hammer Studio films. So this will be the one film where we actually get to discuss him a little bit more, which is good. Well,
we'll discuss him some more actually when he I believe he plays the Van Helsing type character in Kiss of the Vampire.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll circle back around to him later. So those are the two leads in this, but there's also a third guy who plays the romantic lead. I can't remember his name. His name is Edward D'Souza. Edward D'Souza is Harry Hunter in this movie, but he's mostly known for apparently he was the Sheik in The Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond movie, and he also was a guy in Jane Eyre. You won't know who this guy is, but you will know who he replaced. Because not rumor has it, but it's fairly common knowledge at this point that Hammer was really jazzed to get Cary Grant to star in this movie. Cary Grant, of course, for you youngins, was basically what?
No, you youngins. I like the way you said that about Cary Grant.
You
Like,
youngins out there who didn't grow up watching Turner Classic Movies like we did,
yeah,
uh, but probably not really know that Cary Grant was basically kind of the George Clooney of his era, except he was British. I mean, he was the most tallest, handsome, suavest kind of guy out there, and he did a lot of Hitchcock movies. His
yeah, I was about
main
to say that.
Yeah, I think his most famous Hitchcock movie was North by Northwest, where he's the guy running away from the airplane and is trying to kill him in the crop fields, that whole thing, which you youngins might not even know that. Ugh, I feel so old. Anyway, Cary Grant was super famous in the 50s and 60s, all right? He was top of the world. He'd done a lot of Hitchcock things. Oh, Notorious was another Hitchcock thing he did.
Yeah, but he
And
also did lots of romantic comedies and everything else too. He was all over the place.
Oh yeah, like George Clooney. Like I said, he was the
Yeah, like
Clooney.
George Clooney.
He was the Clooney of his era. I guess the only difference is that he had no aspirations to direct like Clooney has.
Yeah.
Um, so and there came a point in his career in the '60s where he's like, I want to do a horror picture, and that would have been fantastic for I almost called him Clooney for Mr. Archibald Leach, otherwise known as Cary Grant. But apparently he wanted to do Phantom of the Opera, and he was going to play the part played by the part of Hunter, the romantic lead. And for whatever reason, he backed out at the last minute. And I think it may have something to do with maybe what they did to the script, because because they kind of, there's rumor has it, according to I think some of the things on IMDb, that they kind of softened the violence in the script
Really?
and softened the well. If you notice, the Phantom never actually kills anybody in this movie. This is the only movie I have ever seen of Phantom of the Opera where the Phantom does not kill anybody directly. Although his hunchback slash dwarf assistant
Yeah.
is the one who does all the killing.
Yeah.
This little guy does all the heavy lifting and gets no gratitude from Mr. Phantom. Thank you very much, sir.
Despite the fact
But
that he saved the Phantom.
he saved the Phantom, quote unquote. He saved my life, which is to say, he just pulled me out of the water I was floating in. Even though I was clearly not unconscious, I could have easily just gotten myself out of that water. But okay, fine. I also think it's funny how he's called the dwarf, but he's clearly an average sized man. And I think he's supposed to be a hunchback, but his back's not really that crooked either. So he's like neither. He's just a weird guy. I'm just gonna call him the dwarf back. There you go. I'm gonna call him the dwarf back.
Yeah, that's right. I was about to say I don't think they gave him a name in the movie. They just called him the dwarf.
Yeah, he has no name, he has no motivation, and he has no origin story. He is literally just in the lair when when the guy who becomes the Phantom washes up. He's right there. It's almost as if the man who would be the Phantom literally just goes from his scarring, his disfigurement, washes into the river, gets sucked under, and like literally deposited into, this is your life now. Got your layer. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if we panned up and the harpsichord is already there for reasons.
Oh my
Because like
god.
that's the effort of world building that goes on in this movie. Uh so yeah, I think I lost my train of thought there. But anyway, yeah. So the idea, I think, is that Cary Grant probably looked at this and said, "Well, this is stupid," and backed out at the last minute, because it's like they defanged the Phantom to try and maybe appeal to a
Eyebrow.
Hollywood star who was not known for horror movies. But I do think it was nice on his part that he was at least trying to branch out and do something different. And I will say, if he had done this movie, I think it would have been a little better.
Mm.
I think he would have brought a lot of charisma to this part that Mr.
Yeah.
D'Souza doesn't really do. And yeah, it would have been a nice little footnote in his career.
And it may have been a more successful movie, by the way.
Oh yeah, I probably would have.
And we probably would have seen some sequels. So
Yeah, yeah. Although I don't know how they could have figured that out. I mean,
dude, they figured out how to keep both Frankenstein and Dracula going after
yeah,
they
but
became hit.
I know, but both of those characters are, well, I mean, Well, Frankenstein is just a dude, but he's a dude who's able to like take out his brain. Well, figure out how to switch brains with people. Yeah, but I mean, Phantom, I don't know how you come back. I mean, let's just say spoilers here, folks. This is the only. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm gonna bury the lead here, but we're gonna talk a lot about other stuff that may be more interesting than this. But like,
But keep in mind that this is the family opera, so everyone knows generally what the story is about. So when we talk
you
about the actors and stuff, this is much different. This
you
is
would think you do, but clearly the people who wrote this movie, who I haven't credited yet, I'm sorry, they're all probably dead by now anyway. But like, it's like they took all the basic beats and
yeah,
cliches of a Phantom movie and just kind of jiggered them around a little bit.
yeah, pretty much.
Like, like, I mean, one of the most famous bits in the original Phantom is the snorkel scene where the Phantom takes a snorkel and gets into the waterway and sneaks up on one of his victims with a little snorkel just poking out of the water.
Yeah.
And then he comes out of the water and attacks a guy. And in this movie, the Phantom does not do that. Instead, the hunch dwarf does that. And not to very good effect. He kind of sucks at it, actually. So, and then another thing, spoilers, where we're getting at here is the Phantom gets. Yeah, this is the only Phantom movie actually I've ever seen where the chandelier. Everybody knows, and I think even Terrence Fisher knows that everybody knows because one of the very first shots of this movie is from up in the rafters, looking down, and there's the chandelier hanging over the people performing this opera, which we'll get into what opera they're performing because it's interesting to me. Anyway, there's the chandelier, and we all know the chandelier is going to crush somebody in this movie, and usually it's always one of the singers. Somebody's going to get crushed by that chandelier. But guess what, folks? That doesn't happen in this movie. Nope. The Phantom gets crushed by the chandelier in this movie. I'm not sure how you come back from that when you're just a dude, like a normal dude.
Yeah, Ace Hammer. They could have. It could have been supernatural. He gets crushed by the chandelier, and then he gets rushed to the hospital, and all of a sudden he comes back to life because they've been doing some CPR, busting on his chest or something, and he's alive.
Oh, this could have been an interesting thing. Maybe instead, how about they take him to a hospital and some mad doctor who's not Frankenstein, but is very similar to Frankenstein. Also, probably not played by Peter Cushing, maybe played by somebody else. I'm not sure who would be played by, but anyway, he maybe played by Oliver Reed. Let's stick him in there. Oliver Reed is this evil genius who wants to bring the Phantom back. So he does. He gives him like a mechanical heart. That's his big thing. He's invented the first mechanical heart, like 100 years before that, and he sticks it in his chest and brings him back, just like King Kong and King Kong lives.
I was about to say
yes.
King Kong lives.
Yes. He brings the Phantom back. He even gives him like some kind of injection that's going to keep him from whatever mysterious disease the Phantom said he was dying of, which made his hands look like a corpse hands. He's like, I'm dying already. So that could be interesting because he's like, he gives you this thing, and he's like, whatever do I do to repay you? And then maybe he blackmails the Phantom into like killing off his enemies. Or maybe they go to New York. Like I said, Phantom goes to New York. And they do like a Hammer Universal co-production where it's like, Phantom goes to Broadway. And maybe the Mad Doctor has like enemies on Broadway. Some evil producer did something to him. I don't know. They'd figure it out. But yeah, that could be a thing.
They're playing the same production as they're playing in this film, and they're using his music again.
Yes.
Because Michael Gall's character decided to branch out to other ones, trying to double dip.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's another thing that pisses me off about this movie. Michael Gall, spoilers, is really the antagonist of this movie. He's a Harvey Weinstein-esque bastard who's trying to horn in on our female lead, our Christine, not Daae, but Christine, again, Britishized.
Christine Charles.
Christine Charles, which is so British, especially now that we have a King Charles again. But anyway, so he's literally trying to molest her by saying, hey, I could give you singing lessons if you come back with me into my apartment. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And poor Christine, which, by the way, not to bash on this movie, that whole scene is actually one of the best scenes in the movie because there's some great acting going on, especially from her. And you see how she very cleverly gets her way out of this slime ball's hands and gets into the hands of Mr. Hunter, our handsome, suave male lead. It's a really nice little scene. But like that guy who does that and did some horrible things to our Phantom character, guess what? He survives. He lives at the end of this movie because we don't let our Phantom kill anybody. The only thing that happens is, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but the Phantom takes off his mask and scares him away. I was on pins and needles waiting for him to kill him. Like, I thought, of all the people who deserve to die by the Phantom's strangling hands, it surely would have been this guy. Nope. Doesn't happen. He just buggers off.
Buggers off. Yeah.
So if we did this sequel with Oliver Reed as a mad scientist who gives him mechanical heart, dude, he could have been back. He could have been alive, and then maybe that could have been the impetus. Maybe he could have been like, look, your enemy is still alive. How dare he? So then he could have actually killed Michael Gough in the sequel. The Phantom Goes to New York, and it would have been amazing.
Yeah, and then each sequel, just the Phantom goes to a new city, just like Frankenstein would go to a new city to do his experiments on.
Oh yeah, we could have had the Phantom in Tucson, Arizona, haunting a production of Macbeth by like high schoolers and killing off like horny teenagers. By the time the franchise got waned into the late 70s, they could have been doing that with the Phantom. I feel like he was such an underused character.
He's always an underused character. I don't know of any Phantom movie that's actually had a sequel.
There isn't one.
Yeah,
not a whit.
Everyone just remakes it and just keeps remaking it. But
the closest thing we have to that is on Broadway, because the original Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom of the Opera did get a sequel called Love Never Dies, which apparently everyone hates.
It's different. I've seen the recorded version of the production. It's different.
Is the Phantom even in it?
Yes and no. It's a weird. Yes, he is. It's a weird story. It's a decent story. It's just weird. And I have to rewatch it again because it was one of those things where it's not what I was expecting, and I think that's why it did not survive on Broadway. It's not what anyone who enjoys Phantom of the Opera is expecting, and so they get something else. Which is why, it didn't survive. I don't think because it's not running anymore. Neither is Phantom, I don't think. I think Phantom.
Yeah, Phantom just stopped, I think, last year.
Yeah. I missed. I missed that. And Phantom of the Opera is one of my favorite books. I've actually read the book several times, Gaston Leroux's book several times. And I enjoy the different interpretations for the fun of it. But this one's, like you said, is the only one where he doesn't kill anybody. So it's an odd one.
He doesn't kill anybody, but the hench dwarf guy goes through almost all of the things. Like he does the assassins, he does the snorkel thing, like we mentioned. He also does the assassin's noose, the very beginning of the movie. And it's, by the way, probably one of there's like two good jump scares in this movie, and that's the first one. I'll give this movie that. It's got a great little first jump scare when this opera is being performed, and all of a sudden this curtain tears at the side, and bam, a hanged stagehand who I don't even remember what his old thing was. I don't think we even saw him before, but just comes swinging out. Everyone screams.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but that's the thing. In my honest opinion, after reading about the surrounding productions about this and watching all the other films that were coming out from Hammer at the time, this one's like it's almost like they were trying to be much more highbrow than what their audiences wanted. Like they were known for their extreme violence and sexual appeal, and there's very little of either of that in this film.
Yeah, and this is 1962.
Yeah.
So this is like the height of Hammer popularity, if I'm not mistaken, because like the late 50s was when they kind of came into their own. That's when the first Draculas and Frankensteins came out, and the first Quatermass before that. Yeah. And then the 60s, I think they didn't start waning until the late 60s, early 70s. That's when the 70s, that's when you get your Dracula AD 1970s. That's when it starts to get really weird and very repetitive. But also, of course, that's also, of course, where you get a lot of your boobs movies too. So, I mean, you take what you can get. But you don't get any of that in this movie. Just letting you know that out there.
Yeah, like I said, that's why this one always gave me an impression that they were trying to be much more highbrow and less like the Lon Chaney version. I got that right, Lon Chaney. See, and I'm getting them confused of who was in which one now. Jesus. But
It was Lon Chaney. It was Lon Chaney in the original, and then Universal decided that they wanted to put their stamp on the character because nobody owned the rights to that character. So they made one with Claude Rains.
Claude Rains. Thank you.
Yes. Claude Rains, who of course is famous for being the Invisible Man, which I will always wonder why the frack did Hammer never do an Invisible Man. I mean, H.G. Wells is one of the most famous British authors in the world, and his book is public domain. Why did you not ever make an Invisible Man, Hammer? Is it because you didn't want to spend money on the effects? Probably. They did the effects in 1930 something, and they still look good. You could do the same daggum things.
That was black and white. It was probably easier to hide the way they were doing the Invisible Man thing as opposed to what they would do now in color. They couldn't figure it out. I mean, nowadays it'd be really easy to do an Invisible Man film, but yeah.
Lee Wennell did it pretty successfully a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but so this movie is just kind of an outlier in many respects, and some things we can talk about that are interesting.
Let's bring something up.
Well, let's see. I do think it's interesting here. I do like the way that they've. Oh gosh. Well, before we get into the plot or anything, one more stylistic choice in this movie that I think is actually really good. In fact, I think that the mask of the Phantom that he wears is, I think, one of the better masks that has ever been worn by any of the Phantoms. Like, this mask is disturbing. Like, and the opening credits, the opening salvo of this movie really sells that mask. I mean, this movie, to its credit, does not waste any time showing you the Phantom. Like, the very first thing is like it's silence. And then we gradually come into the little river that comes into the Phantom's lair.
Yep.
And up the river, there is the little hunchback guy on a perch like a gargoyle watching the Phantom play his harpsichord music. And we come in and we're going to come into a close-up on the Phantom's mask. And this mask, which is like, it almost looks like something Rob Zombie would have made for one of his, not main characters, but like maybe one of the side killers in like a House of a Thousand Corpses thing, because it's so simplistically bland, but it's also so creepy in how it's just, because it's just one eye. The only thing you see of the Phantom is his left eye, I think. And the camera just kind of zooms in on that left eye during the whole credits. And what's cool about it is, like, this mask was very hastily put together, apparently. Like, it's literally just, I think, plaster and cloth. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. And just a little hole poked in for the eye. And it covers all of Herbert Lom's face except for his eye. And that eye just kind of pokes out and stares into your soul.
Yeah.
And also, I love the fact that they are consistent with the audio with that mask. It's whenever he speaks, it sounds like he's muffled. It does sound like a man talking through a mask.
Oh, you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that till now.
And I love that about it. And that is precisely what pissed me off about V for Vendetta, the movie. Because that man is supposed to be wearing a mask the entire movie, but Hugo Weaving's voice sounds crisping clear, barely muffled at all, as if he has a freaking mic inside that mask. Come on, no. This movie at least sticks to the realism.
It's like wearing a ghost face mask. Come on.
But yeah, I
Right.
think it's what's cool about it though is that he's got the one eye, and also I feel like and also because it looks like there's a texture to it. It looks rough. It looks like it's gray. It's got text. It's got some kind of weird texture to the front of it. I mean, he's got little holes for the nose so you can at least breathe.
Hmm.
But that's it. That's all there is. Sometimes you'll actually see the mouth part kind of inflect a little bit when he's clearly breathing out and talking. But other than that, it just looks like this thing that I don't know. I find it really neat, and I wish somebody would do. I mean, some Phantom masks are a little over stylized, like the one Claude Rains wears in the Universal
Yeah.
one, and of course the De Palma Phantom of the Paradise one. Although I really like the bird design, they went for that one. Um, and of course you have the cliche classic, you know, barely covers the burns on his face version that you get in the Andrew Lloyd Webber version, where it's like
And
half the face.
yeah,
That's
okay.
the cle that's the cliche. This
Yeah.
one is a little different. That's what I like about it. It's very interesting and to look at. Um, and they keep with the realism of it. But the fact that he has one eye is not lost on the production on the whoever wrote it, because like the first time anyone sees the Phantom outside of his lair, he's tormenting the lead actress, the Maria, the opera singer, in the first part of it, and she screams and he's there and he warns her not to go out, and she goes to the guy and she says, "Oh, she's terrible. He was looking at me with one eye in the middle of his forehead," which is very interesting. They said the eye is in the middle of his forehead. That to me says Cyclops, but specifically
Cyclops.
this. Yes, well, the eye is not clearly not in the middle of his forehead. It is on the left side of his eye. So they did that on purpose. They
Mm.
wrote that line purposefully. So I think they were trying very hard to make the Phantom synonymous with the Greek Cyclops Polyphemus, which, for those of you who don't know, Polyphemus is like the prototypical Cyclops of Greek mythology. He's
Yeah.
the guy. He is the monster uh, of Greek mythology who is a Cyclops. The Cyclops are a whole species of giants that, you know, were in the primeval days and helps Zeus in his rebellion against his dad, Kronos. But there's one particular Cyclops named Polyphemus, whose father is Poseidon. And he's famous because he is the Cyclops that Odysseus fights in the Odyssey, which hopefully we'll see him in Christopher Nolan's version coming up next year. But he's a tragic monster because in later Greek mythology, I mean, yeah, he lives in a cave like this Phantom, and he kills people, not like this Phantom, but like the usual Phantom, eats people and stuff. But he's a tragic monster because, like, he is in later Greek myths, he's also in love with a beautiful woman. He falls in love for this nymph that doesn't care about him one bit. And so I think that's what they're trying to draw parallels to. But this Phantom is kind of the Cyclops of Greek myth. I mean, also think about it this way. Just realize the Phantom is effectively born of first fire and then water. He goes into the river, he comes out from the river. He's got a stream of water underneath his lair. He's got one eye. He's fawns for a woman that he can't have. Although on this one he's a little bit more professional towards Christine, but there's still that link, that emotional link. And so I feel like that's a neat little touch that this movie decided to link this monster with a classical monster from Greek mythology.
Actually, that's a really cool metaphor, analogy, or link to the two, because I would have never thought about that. But you're absolutely right. I can see some of that now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. So go back and Google Polyphemus the Cyclops, and you'll see all sorts of neat things popping up. So yeah, the mask and that link is pretty cool. And also, there's another great jump scare when Maria is singing, and then like a hand, and like the Phantom pops up, and she screams, and there's a jump cut to a cymbal banging, which must have scared the crap out of people back in 1962. So I think that's pretty cool. Oh, we forgot to mention the dwarf back, played by Ian Wilson. Let's give credit where credit is due to Mr. Wilson. He was a prolific character actor. In the 60s, he was in The Wicker Man and Day of the Triffids. So he got around. Um, I still don't think that I still don't think that the Phantom needs a henchman. Why? There's no need for it. But
Same
anyway,
reason why they always gave Igor to Frankenstein in the movies, but does really need a henchman.
I guess. I mean, they could have explained it though. They could have said that like the hand like the Phantom's hands are like necrotic, so maybe he can't set up these death traps like he used to. That would have been a neat. That would have been a neat little. That's probably why he needs a little guy to hobble around and help him.
Well, I kind of saw him in similar ways, as he would be like the onstage eyes for the Phantom, whereas the Phantom would be watching from the audience. That's kind of how I saw him, because I was trying to figure out a way why he would be in the story. And that's about all I could come up with, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, and Herbert Lom, of course, we should probably say, and we've talked about what he looks like, but what do we think of Herbert Lom as the Phantom in this?
So it's interesting because they take a different approach to the Phantom. They don't make him as like a bad guy, because he doesn't kill anybody. And he actually, at one point, even though he abducts Christine, he does ask for permission for her to stay down there so he can teach her, which is not what he would do in any of the other films. Like, he's like like he may have had bad intentions originally by kidnapping her down there, but then he like kind of asked, and I'm like, oh, okay. So they're trying really hard not to make him the bad guy, but then the bad guy that we all assume is going to get the come up as Michael Gall's character never does. So it's one of those. It's a weird movie. I think Herbert Lom is fine. I just think the idea of the Phantom is an odd choice. What they did with him.
It's a hard part to play if you're a certain kind of actor. I feel like there's two things that you really need. I mean, well, first of all, it should come as no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, who Hammer originally wanted to play the Phantom. It was, of course, Sir Christopher Lee. Now, can you imagine him in that mask and him in that outfit? A much more taller, more imposing presence he would have been. He would have just knocked it out of the park.
He would have been like Tinnerello in The Wicker Man. He would have had that presence like his character in The Wicker Man. That's what he would have done.
Oh yeah. Maybe. Yeah, if they let him, maybe they would have let him add some of the humor of that character too. That might have been neat to see. But yeah, but the problem with the Phantom is that, especially with this mask, you are covered for at least 2/3 of the movie. Like, no one will see your face. So if you're gonna play the Phantom, you got to have an imposing physical presence. You got to have a nice set of hands, I think, because you're going to see the hands in close up a lot. And you got to have a really good voice. Because if you're not going to see your face is either going to be covered by a mask or makeup. If you're lucky, you'll get a flashback like Herbert Lom does. But by and large, you're going to get, you need your body and your voice have to be really unique. And Herbert Lom, I don't think he quite does the physical stuff, but his voice works for what they're trying to do. And like I said, they're consistent with the muffling, although you could say that's kind of a handicap too, with the voice. But yeah, those are the two things that you really need the most when you're doing the Phantom, unless you're doing it as like a silent movie, like the original guy did. And there are parts in this movie very like the opening credits. There's another part later on, where it almost becomes a silent movie again. Just before Christine is about to sing for the Phantom, there's like no sound and no dialogue when she's first seeing him. She's just reacting and not saying anything. It kind of becomes a silent movie again. So clearly, Terence Fisher had a real respect and reverence for the original, which I think is nice. I just wish the screenwriter had the same respect.
Anthony Hines. I don't know. It'd be interesting to look into this movie is not in what I've been reading over the Hammers over the years. This one is not nearly as written about as a lot of the other Hammer films.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a big, probably because ultimately it doesn't take as many big swings as some of their other ones. I mean, because Horror of Dracula took a couple of big swings. In the very beginning of Horror of Dracula, they're doing it differently by having Jonathan Harker going to Castle Dracula specifically to murder Dracula. That was his whole intention. He is a vampire hunter from the get-go. That is different. And of course, they take the big swings with Curse of Frankenstein too, by having him make a different monster, survive, and maybe also be crazy in his mind. He's making it all of it up. There's so many creative things. They don't make as many swings in this version
There
like
aren't.
they could have.
Yeah, other than adding the dwarf character, there's not much big swings. I never thought about that till now.
Yeah, yeah, and the one big swing, the couple of big swings that they do kind of sort of make, they don't really fully commit to, or nor do they really land that well. And we'll talk about the one big swing that I think that they make that doesn't really land at all, and it boggles my mind.
Which
But
one do you
before,
think about? Because
well,
I'm just thinking about.
I'll tell you, but I think it's specifically to do with the ending and how they set up that ending. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, oh, we'll get into it. But I think one of the cool things about that is good about this movie, it's got a lot of nice uh side characters that just show up and leave or die. Uh
Like the cleaning people.
like the cleaning ladies. I love the cleaning ladies. So
I
there's this
love that
whole
scene. That scene is
yeah,
so much fun.
yeah. That's probably the one advantage to moving the action to England, although I would argue they could have easily had all these characters be British French, which is like whenever Hammer is doing a story set in, say, Germany or France or whatever, they're all pronouncing the French names correctly, but they're all clearly speaking the King's English.
Yeah.
That they could have easily just done that; they would have been just fine. But no. So these people are very British and very like Cockney, and so like basically Hunter and Christine are coming back to the opera because she's trying to prove to Hunter that the Phantom is real, that she saw him in her dressing room. And he believes her, but he needs to find out for himself. So he kind of becomes a detective character with motivations that are sometimes unclear. But in this case, it's clear that he wants to get in Christine's pants. So obviously, this is what motivates him to become detective. This is his desire for her pants. And so he's there, and the cleaning ladies are cleaning on. They're like, "Oh, and they're like, um, what are they doing? They're making jokes and they're going back and forth. It's a really fun little scene. And one of them gets scared by what they think is the Phantom, and they run off, like scurrying away like rats. And it turns out it's not the Phantom, it's the rat catcher, who we thought, oh, he's not scary, although he turns out to be one of the most vile humans on the planet. Uh, by the way, fans of Doctor Who
Yeah.
will will recognize the actor playing the rat catcher as Patrick Troughton, who is famous for being the second Doctor, the one with the bowl haircut and played the piccolo. He is the rat catcher in this movie, and he goes out to Christine and Hunter. He's like the scuzziest human in London, and he's just like, "Oh, I got see some rats here. Look at them. I
I
got
know.
15. I got 15 of them. Oh, nice for us. You can have them if you want. They're great for a stew."
Yeah, I there is a lot of great characters like that in this movie, and and those characters play up the humor of the movie, because there's not much humor in the movie other than when these type of tertiary characters show up. Um,
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
actually, I kind of do like. It kind of lightens up the mood with the other characters. Like like I keep saying, I think they were trying to make this prestigious film, but they couldn't get away from some of their own trappings. So
yeah.
I mean,
And
it livens up the film. It livens up the film by far.
it does, and I think modern audiences will be very happy with how this guy dies because first of all, like if you're an animal lover, you hate this guy more than anything because he's still horrible to these rats. But as soon as he turns the corner and leaves them, while our leading characters won't go off and try to investigate this phantom, then all of a sudden comes the hunchback dwarf, sneaks up from behind the rat catcher, spills his rats all over the floor, and stabs the guy in the eyeball. And for like a split second, you can see the knife go into his eye socket. and like is blood and what looks like part of a eyeball coming out, and it's just like, whoa, dang! I'm sure my imagination is making it worse than it actually is, but because it's like a split second, and because the blood is so red, and because it's right there on his eye, it's like, wow, that's pretty. It makes you think that you're in for a ride that you aren't really going to get, but it's a nice little shocking bit of Hammer gore.
Yeah, well, it needs it because there's not a whole lot of it in here. I mean, but like we've discussed, the dwarf does all the killing, and he just kills random people. So it, like, I don't know if there's any real motivation for the people he kills, which makes it, if the Phantom had done those killings, really weird and random. And like in other Phantom of the Opera movies, it's usually explained why he kills the people he kills. But here, the dwarf is just, okay, I'm just gonna kill somebody.
Yeah, I mean, there is a line later on where like the Phantom, and this is clearly the screenwriters trying to cover their butts, but the Phantom says that sometimes he becomes like a wild animal and he's uncontrollable, as if that excuses everything. But like, you know what? Okay, so like, even if Mr. Phantom, even if you're not responsible for you're not directly responsible. I mean, come on. Clearly, you were okay with whatever this dwarf was doing. This was your man,
And that's because the dwarf saved my life, is what he would say.
and that makes everything okay. That makes him that makes him a serial killer for hire, and that's perfectly fine, I guess. But see, that's the problem. That's the problem when you're writing something and you're trying to soften up a villain or you're trying to soften up a monster.
Yeah.
It never works. So screenwriters out there, please don't do that. If some studio gives you that note, show them this movie and be like, "See, it doesn't work. Don't do that. Don't try to pass the buck of the murders to a different character because
Yeah,
it just doesn't work."
it doesn't. And then, of course, like we mentioned before, the whole chandelier sequence is him trying to save Chris. Is it Christine or
Yeah, it was Christine, but
okay?
it's funny
He's trying to save,
that
and it's so
I
weird. It's like
yeah.
it's an odd thing. It's cool that we still get a chandelier falling. It's just that the reason why and who it hits is just weird. It's odd.
You know what's funny though? The chandelier falling on him, what actually happens, I don't mind. The build up to it, I do mind.
Okay.
But like what actually happens to him could still have worked if he was a murdering monster and that was his chance at redemption. And I think that would have worked better if he was a murdering monster before.
But he's not.
You see, yeah. See, that's why that bit at the end doesn't land because he doesn't sink into depravity in the beginning. There's nowhere for him to rise up from. And that's why it really doesn't work.
Okay, interesting. I didn't think about that. Interesting. Okay.
You see, we figured it out. That was the problem with this version. Also, another thing about this version that I think is interesting is that, well, I mean, it's not different, but it causes me. I mean, well, first of all, I have to stop for a second and look back, take a 10,000 look view, and ask Kevin. I think this is the first time we've ever done a Phantom of the Opera movie for this podcast or the main feed.
It is. It is.
So this is our entryway into the Phantom lore. So whatever we do, we're going to end up talking about the Phantom on film as a whole, because like this movie can't escape the legacy of what it is before. So this is interesting that the Phantom. Okay, so the Phantom's origin in this one is basically where he was a brilliant but eccentric composer who was trying to get his music published, and there's a printing press, and Michael Gough is this, Harvey Weinstein is slimeball, who says, "Oh, I'll print your music with my fancy printing press." And then Herbert Lom finds out, oh no, he actually put his name on the printer. He put his name on my music, and he took credit for it. No, so then he tries to destroy the printing press and destroy the printer, and ends up burning the place down and burning his face with acid. And then that's when he falls into the river and becomes Phantom. What's interesting is like the acid thing. if we go back to the original Phantom and the original Gaston Leroux story, if I'm not mistaken, the Phantom is not burned by acid. The Phantom's tragedy is not that he was once a normal dude who became a monster. He was always a monster in the original. He just was a monster who had a heart of a composer and made music. But because he was in the original movie, he was born that way. He was born with a face that looked like a skull for reasons. Some I think in the book it may have said that he had a leprous looking face. So, which to say that when you have leprosy, your face basically rots until there's just nothing because your nerve endings are dead. So he had like no nose, which is why Lon Chaney pulled his nose back and made it look like a skeletal nose. So that's part of the genius of Chaney's design. But ever since the Claude Rains version in the 40s, where he is a normal dude who got acid on his face, every version of Phantom, except for the Dario Argento version, which is weird for many reasons.
Well, maybe the Robert Englund one too.
The what?
The Robert Englund one.
Really? I see. I've never seen that one because I've only seen the poster, and it looks like he got acid in the face in that one too.
I can't remember. He makes a deal with like the devil. And I can't remember. I think I think his face just gets burned, but it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Well, he makes a deal with the Phantom makes a deal with the devil in the Phantom of the Paradise as well, but his face gets burned by a record press, and so yeah. But like literally every version of Phantom after that in which he's deformed at all is some kind of accident or some kind of burn or some kind of acid thrown in the face. They never ever do. Phantom is just a deformed dude who was born this way. So I think it's interesting to note that, like, Hammer had a chance to be different and they chose not to.
Oh, Jesus.
By the way, when the Phantom's playing, I love that the music he's playing is Beethoven's, I think, Seventh Symphony, one of the most famous organ pieces ever. And I think the Claude Rains version has it too. But I think, well, I don't know, maybe not. But I think this may be the first Phantom version where he plays that particular piece of music. That,
I don't know anymore. Yeah. Like
I think
this is the first time I've seen the Phantom of the Opera story within the last probably decade, except for when I saw the Evil Never Love Never Die, the musical sequel to the Broadway show, which I saw I think a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I hadn't watched the Phantom of the Opera in a long time, so I couldn't even tell you. It's a good idea. I mean, we should actually delve deep into more of the Phantom versions. That's actually a great idea.
Yeah, so people out there in YouTube land and people out there in Spotify land, if this is the first time they played that Beethoven piece on the harpsichord or on the organ, and chime in, see if you know that this is the first time they did that, because that would be interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to know. I also think it's interesting that so another beat that every Phantom movie's got to have, and this is part of, I think, what appeals to me, is like the unmasking scene. There's always a scene where the girl unmasks the Phantom. And spoilers, folks, that doesn't happen in this movie. I kept waiting for it to happen when they were first meeting in the cave, and Christine comes to after she's been dragged through the water a little bit. In fact, I think it's kind of hilarious how the hunched dwarf carries her like she's a sack of potatoes, and her, after she's been abducted the first time, and her head kind of gets into the water a little bit, and just the first like tuft of her hair gets wet. And I was like, man, what if he trips? He could have drowned her. But she just kind of flings her on the ground, and the Phantom's playing, and she comes to and washes her wet hair, which must have been an accident. I don't think that was intentional. But again, there's no dialogue for a good long stretch till the Phantom speaks. And but I thought that would be the moment. I thought she would come up to him while he's playing, and that would be the moment she rips that mask off and sees him. Nope, that doesn't happen. In fact, that doesn't happen. Like, there's the Phantom Unmasked himself when he's confronting Mr. Michael Gough, 1800s Harvey Weinstein, the true villain of this movie,
He's
and
scared.
does not kill him. He just
Scared
scares him off.
Yeah.
He takes off his mask then, but we don't see it. So he doesn't take off his mask till the very end of the movie before he jumps and kills himself, basically. And we only see that makeup for a few seconds. So I was a little disappointed because the makeup looked kind of neat.
Yeah, I about that.
Yeah, because they imply that not only is the Phantom burned, but he's dying of some illness that's making his skin look all ashy. And there is some truth to that because I was actually researching a Phantom of the Opera script that I was writing. I was trying to write this modernized version of the story that takes a unique twist on it. But I was looking up burn victims and the fact that a lot of third-degree burns, you get infected. So I realized that if my version of the character got burned all over their body and not just their face. So I thought, oh, wouldn't it be neat if there was an infection in the arm from the burn and they had to get their arm chopped off and had to have like a robot arm. And I thought that would be super cool. But maybe that's what was happening with this Phantom, was that he had infection, like gangrene or some disease that was like spreading illness throughout his whole body from those burns. Because, he went in sewer water basically and probably never had a doctor check his wounds. So, of course, yeah, he's probably dying of like a staph infection or something.
Oh my God. I'm sure the dwarf could have gotten out there and stolen him some medical supplies.
The dwarf is he's everything. He's a serial killer, a house painter, or not a house painter, housekeeper, acrobat, clearly, and rat catcher killer. And yes, he's also a surgeon.
Oh my God.
He's like Alfred to his Batman. Yes.
Oh jeez.
It is all about Batman. But yeah, I also like so again, some of the side characters in the movie are pretty interesting. There's also, I love the guy who is basically the associate producer to Michael Gough's character, which, by the way, like, he gets mad at that Mr. Hunter, the Hunter guy, who is also a producer. I'm unclear as to what he actually does in this movie because Gough fires him, but he's the producer.
Yeah, he's the producer. No, yeah. Gal is like the executive producer, creative person.
I guess.
And he hires Hunter to be the producer and put it all together because Hunter has the connections and the crew and everything like that, which is why when he is fired, most of the crew leaves with him because they don't like Michael Gough's character.
Right. And then he fires him when he sees him being creepy and not hiring Christine because Christine won't sleep with him. Yeah. So he hires this less talented girl to be his Joan of Arc in his Joan of Arc opera, which we will get into in just a minute because I think that whole thing's worth talking about too.
Yes, I want to make sure we discuss that.
Yes, please. But so he fires him and then he has to rehire him because Gough's assistant basically says, we need him because the crew likes him. And I love how Gough is, who's like this Orson Welles type guy. I swear he looks just like Orson Welles. And I like him. He's funny and relatable. So I wish it actually was Orson Welles, but still. But yeah, like we said, it's like you see at the beginning and very much at the end of the movie this opera, and this opera is called Saint Joan. And I looked it up, and I wanted to see if this was actually a real opera, and if it was an adaptation of the play by George Bernard Shaw called Saint Joan, which I read in college, which is one of the best adaptations of the story of Joan of Arc. Is this play, which is a very kind of very modernist take on the character. It's very interesting. Which itself was made into a movie by Otto Preminger in the 60s with Jean Seberg as Joan of Arc, and she was way too old to play the part. But anyway, it was black and white. It was very neat. The thing of it is, though, is like, so if you're at all familiar with Phantom of the Opera, you may or may not like opera as a medium, but in whatever version of Phantom of the Opera, you're gonna get some opera in this movie.
Yeah.
The thing about opera though is that opera doesn't really sound great in English. It's the best arias are those from either Italian, French, or some other, usually Italian, let's fix it, or Spanish, like Carmen. Carmen's a great Spanish opera. But this is an English opera because it's a very British opera, an opera about Joan of Arc, which I think is kind of funny because if you read Shakespeare, you know that in Joan of Arc's time, Shakespeare, the British attitude towards Joan of Arc was not very favorable. They hated Joan of Arc because Joan of Arc was on the side of the French. She was an enemy of the British people. Crazy freaking witch. Why would we make her a saint or anything? But the Catholic Church decided they should. So it's very strange to have, years later, not even like 2 centuries after, is this British company making in the world of this movie, making a opera about Joan of Arc in English. It would have made more sense again if they kept this in France. But anyway, so the British, for whatever reason, are making a opera of Joan of Arc, but so for those of you who don't know what opera is,
I'm pretty sure most people know what opera is. Opera is just, opera is what most people think only rich people listen to. That being said, I want to let everyone know that I've had season tickets to the opera for like the last 4 years. Me and my wife love to go to the opera, so I've listened to a lot of operas live.
Oh, so you are more cultured than I am, Mr. Powers. Oh, very well.
Yeah,
well, yeah, but it's kind of like where the original film language came from, because it was the first art form that combined all of the arts. You had, stagecraft with, paintings, and you had, classical composer music, and you also had singing, and you also had acting. So you had drama and music all together. And it's all singing all the time. That's the main feature of opera as a whole. It's all singing all the time, and the actors sing their dialogue. And that's the show. There's no dancing per se, unless it's like Carmen or something like that, where they might add some ballet or such. But so it's kind of weird for modern audiences to see a bunch of people standing around in medieval outfits just kind of singing at each other and standing still. That's pretty much a tenth of this movie.
Yeah, they're not very dynamic with the opera that is presented here. And we get to see a good bit of it at the very beginning of the film, too.
Oh yes. I was shocked at how much we see of this opera of Joan of Arc. It's to the point where I think, especially towards the end, I thought, is this movie really just a backdoor pilot for a Joan of Arc movie from Hammer? Because I'm thinking maybe that's their real intention. Because I feel like they give more thought to this Joan of Arc opera than they do to the Phantom movie as a whole.
Oh, I guarantee you that was like they created the whole thing for that whole opera, and you got to see a huge chunk of it at the very beginning of the movie, and then I think you see little tidbits throughout when they're rehearsing or something. I can't remember 100% because now it's got me confused with another movie right now. But but the thing is, this is like it kind of gets you into that mentality, this highbrow society that loves opera, because Michael Gall's character is supposed to be a premier, like a whiz kid with this music that he's crafted that's supposed to be the greatest ever. Of course, he stole it from the Phantom, but he's arrogant enough to have believed that he is as creative as the Phantom is, which, tragedy as the whole film is, or what happens to the Phantom, which I actually liked having that backdrop, that background information about him, because we don't usually get that type of information about him in certain films. But it does add a little bit more flavor to him, especially since you want to be more sympathetic towards his character in this film, especially
yeah. Yeah, but I feel like they do a little bit too much sympatheticness of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think having the dwarf character in there means that you are a little bit more sympathetic towards him than you normally would be because he's not killing anyone.
But it's not just that though. Like, so we're coming to the climax of this, and this is where, again, major spoilers. But like, Hunter confronts the Phantom with Christine there, and he's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yes." And she's laying on the Phantom's mattress. It's kind of funny. That I guess is where he sleeps. But he gives them his whole backstory, and that's kind of where we have that prolonged flashback.
Yep.
And when it's over, though, he basically has won them over.
Yeah.
The Phantom is basically like, he doesn't really. He stated no plan to get revenge on Gough, Michael Gough. He just says, all I want to do before I die is watch my opera and you sing it, Christine.
Yeah.
Because she's already been recast. So that's what they do. And it's kind of anticlimactic because, like, he scares away Michael Gough, which I guess facilitates them putting Christine in the show. But it doesn't make any sense for me. Like, unless he actually killed Michael Gough, it doesn't make any sense why he didn't come back with
Yep.
the cops or something.
Or
With
just stop the production altogether. No.
yes, yeah, or pull the power to the electric light.
Well, he's the one putting the money up. So unless well, I don't know because Hunter's like co-producer who's just kind of there all the time. What was his name? I can't remember his name. Saved my life. But he seems to be. I think he's with the theater, or I think he's with the theater itself because
Yeah.
he I think he would be able to either allow it to go without Gal there or not, even though it's supposed to be his music and his production and stuff like that. I think that they essentially could fire Gal and still put the production on without him.
Yeah,
Is what you're supposed to believe, anyways.
Yeah, but we don't see any of that. We
don't
see any of that. You know what would have worked, at least the way they could have salvaged this a little bit, if they just had Michael Gough come back at the end, go nuts when he sees Christine singing at the very end, and instead of having, and this pissed me off, instead of having the hunchback guy gets scared by a stagehand going, "Who are you there? Go back," and chase him so that he accidentally pulls the rope that holds the chandelier of doom, and then it comes down by accident, necessitating the Phantom sacrifice. If they just cut all that out and have Michael Gough come in, wrestle with the hunchback, kill him, and then have him go nuts and try to kill Christine. Maybe have him cut the rope. Because then that would have been interesting. Because then, when the Phantom dies, they would have exposed Michael Gough. He would have been arrested. He would have gone to jail. There would have been some kind of meaningful comeuppance for this bastard. And the Phantom sacrifice would have at least meant something, and they would have confronted each other in some meaningful way. That would have been good. They didn't freaking do that for reasons. You're
right. That actually would be a much more fulfilling ending. I had to wonder why they did it the way they did it.
Don't know. It's dumb. I'm sure Michael would have been just fine. He would have been like, "Of course I'll do it," because he was that kind of guy. Maybe they couldn't afford him for another day. Oh no. But
I'm gonna have to research that soon because that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's just like I do find it. Although, I mean, another thing I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, wait a minute, what? I mean, not that I've really paid that much attention to whatever opera is being played in the Phantom of the Opera movies, because honestly, I don't think the opera itself plays as much of a part in other versions as it does in this movie.
No.
But I do think it's funny, like, why'd they choose Joan of Arc? But then I realized, well, there's a kind of sort of similarity wherein, like, the Phantom was burned, Joan of Arc gets burned. They're both created, quote unquote, by fire. Joan of Arc is burned for being a heretic. The Phantom is burned for being a genius, quote unquote. I don't know. It's not a 1-to-1 like the Cyclops thing is. It's I'm grasping at straws here, but that's like the closest I can think of.
They both die because they become martyrs. How about that one?
Yes, there you go. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the connection. We've solved it. That's why. Ugh. So yeah, but we've already spoiled why that's like that. But anyway, so
We don't do spoiler-free conversations here.
I know, but like I
We
said, we
try
kind of
so
buried
hard all the
we buried
time.
we buried the lead in this one. I just say also that like the bluish skin with the red uh burns and gash on his face that we see for a very short period of time. I did like it. It almost reminds me kind of like a Romero zombie from Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, if you think about it, it does have that kind of look to it, and they did it way before.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my impressions of this movie. It felt disappointing overall. It felt like they could have had something really cool here, but for whatever reason, they just didn't go all the way with it.
Yeah.
I mean, not for whatever reason. I think we figured out what some of the reasons might have been. Um, they got star hungry, and the star didn't show up, and they just didn't bother to change the script when he left.
That's why I'm gonna have to research this because now, and unfortunately, I do not believe that there's a really good version of this out there with any kind of commentary or behind.
No,
Yeah, I'm about to say the only one I've ever seen is that box set that we both have.
there isn't. There isn't. Although my IMDb makes reference to a Hammer history book called Hammer Studios: the Bray Studio Years, where it mentions this movie and mentions the fact that Clark Gable was going to be attached to this movie and why he left.
I've never
Um,
read that one.
yeah, because there is a thing where it says Bray Studios on this one. So I guess for a while they were shooting this at the Bray Studios in England. Um, so our some of our film historians across the pond will probably know the significance of Bray Studios. If you do, please chime in the chat and tell us what the significance is there. Also, going back to talking about the mask. Uh, while as we record this, Halloween is looming very closely. It's only like a couple of weeks away. So this mask, like I said, I think is very effective, very simple, and they made it very quickly. You guys could too. So if you're looking for Halloween costumes out there, ladies and gentlemen, you could do worse than the Hammer version of Phantom of the Opera.
All right, Thomas, I want to thank you for having a conversation about this film because I really want to get to how we're going to rate this one. So,
Well, I have an idea. I have an idea of how we can rate this one because we've been when at least when I'm here, we typically take an object from this movie and use that to rate it because stars are just so 90s.
Well, I do want to let you know that even when you're not there, David started to do the same similar thing to you. So this is rubbing off on him as well.
Great. Awesome. Oh, that's wonderful. And I hope that Philip Ray is going to start doing the Schwarzenegger alternator too, because I know he loved that for The Hidden, and I love that for him. I would love to see him try to do that. But
you're too good at that. You're too good at that.
yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a Schwarzenegger for this one either. But my suggestion is this.
Yes.
Why don't it might sound kind of dumb. Let me know if this is dumb, but maybe it's so dumb it's funny. Why don't we maybe instead of doing the object thing, although I do have an idea for an object.
So do I. So I want to know what you're talking about.
Well, I have an alternative to the object thing. Like, this is a Hammer Studios podcast. Maybe if we start rating these movies with hammers, like literally just hammers.
Okay, you have to inform me. You have to do an example.
Well, like this movie might be rated 2.5 hammers out of 5.
Oh.
2.5 hammers out of 5.
Okay, well let's try that then. Okay.
I mean, the alternative would be for me. The alternative would be just like 2.5 killer chandeliers out of 5.
So,
but this is something I'm only putting this out there because this is something you could easily transfer to all the other Hammer reviews that we'll do on this particular podcast.
All right, so is that what you're going to rate the movie?
Yes. 2.5 killer chandeliers, or if you want to keep doing 2.5 hammers.
Well, I'm gonna do 3 hammers. I gotta get used to that one because I already had mine in place for this one, which is 3 bags of rats.
Oh.
I know you love it when I come up with mine.
Some of yours are just disgusting.
I try and do disgusting one. That's what's so fun about doing them. All right, everyone out there, from all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, we hope that you enjoyed this conversation in Hammer Studio Horrors, in which we delved into the Phantom of the Opera. Please make sure to check out our previous episodes on other films in the Hammer Studios oeuvre. We've done a lot of great ones already, and we are especially excited to be doing some more, even though we won't be doing any more sequels to this franchise.
Unfortunately.
Make sure to check out our original podcast, Conversations in Horror, which is every Wednesday at 8 a.m. And don't forget to check out on our Patreon page, which is a subscriber-based page, our other podcast, Conversations in 4Color, which delves deep into comic books, manga, and graphic novels. We hope that you have enjoyed visiting the opera with us tonight, and that we can't wait to have you back again. Good night.
Sing for me!
Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures and Something Wicked Entertainment podcast. It is hosted by Kevin L. Powers, original music provided by Dusty Ellison, produced and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Our executive producer is Kelly A. Inoka. This podcast is produced in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors is part of the Conversations in Horror podcast franchise and is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures. No part of this program can be used without express permission from Broken Lighthouse Pictures.